At dinner, my wife's daughters, Claire and Maddie, looked me dead in the eyes and said it straight. "You're just a guest nobody asked for." Their mother, Sarah, didn't say a word. She just kept cutting her steak like she hadn't heard her children erase me from the house I paid for. No flinch, no gasp, just the steady rhythm of knife on ceramic, like silence had become her native language. The words didn't explode. They settled, like dust on a windowsill. And that was worse. I didn't speak. Not then. Not with the girls staring at me like they'd finally delivered a long-rehearsed truth. Not with Sarah pretending the moment hadn't cleaved something open. I chewed slowly, swallowed without tasting. Washed it down with lukewarm water and tried to remember if this was the first time I'd been erased. It wasn't. It was just the first time they'd said it out loud. "You're just a guest." 10 years of my life boiled down to 7 words, spoken between bites of roasted chicken and buttered potatoes. They didn't shout it. They didn't flinch. It wasn't a tantrum or teenage rebellion. It was a verdict. Cold. Calculated. Final. That night, I watched the family I had carried for a decade cast me out with the grace of a guillotine. My name is Thomas. I'm 50. And for 10 years, I held that house in Denver together like mortar between bricks. Unseen, unthanked, but essential. Not once did I miss a payment. Not once did I let the fridge go empty. Claire's braces? My insurance. Maddie's asthma meds? My refill. Every school event, every late-night pickup, every recital, every parent-teacher conference, I showed up. Sometimes even when Sarah didn't. I never called them my girls. Not because I didn't want to, but because I could see how badly they wanted me not to. Every time I tried, they'd flinch or pull back, like I trespassed. So I held back. For them. For Sarah. Their biological father, Jason, Phantom, showed up when it was convenient. Christmas. Maybe a birthday. Sent postcards from cities he barely stayed in. Once brought Maddie a necklace from Mexico. She wore it like it was sacred. I bought her a laptop 6 months earlier for school. She never took the sticker off the box before handing it to Claire. And yet somehow he was dad. Jason got the titles. I got the tabs. I used to lie awake at night, thinking maybe it was my delivery. Maybe I was too quiet, too passive. Maybe if I raised my voice, made demands, insisted on respect, they'd see me as more than a placeholder. But I knew better. Respect, I learned, doesn't come louder. It just comes or it doesn't. I paid for dance classes I never got invited to. I paid for ski trips they didn't tell me about until they needed gas money. I paid for new phones, then watched them use those phones to text their real father happy birthday while I sat across from them at the dinner table. That dinner, the night they said it, was ordinary until it wasn't. Claire had made a snide remark about the thermostat. "It's always freezing in here," I said, gently. "Heat's expensive this time of year." Maddie rolled her eyes. "Don't be cheap." Claire laughed. "Yeah, this isn't even your house. Why do you care?" I paused. "I pay the bills." And then Claire, always the bold one, tilted her head and said it. "You're just a guest nobody asked for." The room went quiet, the kind of quiet that hisses in your ears. I looked at Sarah, waiting. She didn't even look up from her plate, just kept cutting into her steak, lips pressed thin, chewing like nothing had happened. And that's when I knew. She agreed. Maybe not out loud. Maybe not with words. But with silence, yes, absolutely yes. I replayed the last decade in my mind that night. All the times I'd stood in the background while Sarah smoothed things over, whispered, "They're just girls. They'll come around." Patted my hand like I was the one who needed calming. I remembered every time she let them disrespect me, talk over me, roll their eyes when I gave advice. Every time she waited until I left the room to say, "He means well." I remembered fixing the sink on Christmas Eve while they watched Hallmark movies in the living room. I remembered carrying Maddie to the ER when she had an allergic reaction. Jason didn't pick up the phone. I remembered opening a second credit card just to cover Claire's senior trip because Sarah didn't want her to feel left out. I remembered working overtime, missing weekends, giving up vacations. 10 years of sacrifice, of presence, of being the man who showed up when no one else did. And yet, to them I was a squatter. I didn't yell that night, didn't slam doors. I finished my dinner in silence. I even did the dishes after. Because it hit me, no outburst would change what had already solidified in their minds. They had already voted, unanimously, and I had lost. I went to bed early. Sarah followed. She didn't say a word, just brushed her teeth, slid under the blanket, turned off the lamp. I lay there, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow above me, and counted the years I'd given to ghosts. I thought about my 20s, the job I loved and left to take one with better pay, the house I sold when Sarah wanted more bedrooms, the trip to Iceland I never took, all traded in the name of family, a word that now sounded like an insult. I remembered the first time Maddie called me Thomas instead of Dad. She was 12. It was deliberate. A test. I laughed, said, "That's new." She shrugged. "It's what you are." It hurt more than I admitted, but I let it go. I told myself kids say things they don't mean. Turns out they meant every word. And Sarah, she let them. Sometimes betrayal doesn't scream. It doesn't slam doors or shout curses. Sometimes it just sits quietly at your table, eating your food, living under your roof, letting your sacrifice burn itself out while it looks away. That night, after the girls went to bed, I sat on the edge of the bathtub and stared at my reflection in the mirror. 50 years old, tired lines under the eyes, shoulders hunched like a man who carried more than groceries and debt. I looked like someone who'd been erased slowly, not in one blow, but piece by piece over time. That's the kind of wound that bleeds inward. You don't even realize how empty you are until someone tells you the truth you've already suspected. You don't belong here. And when they do, when they finally say it, there's no drama, no fireworks, just a quiet confirmation of what your bones already knew. So I ask you, sitting wherever you are, reading this, what would you have done? Would you have stayed? Would you have smiled and tried harder? Would you have waited for Sarah to say something, anything that might undo the damage? Or would you have finally admitted the truth to yourself, that sometimes love without respect is just indentured servitude? Because that's what I gave them. Time, money, peace, patience. And all I got back was silence. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. There was no dramatic suitcase on the lawn, no storm out in the middle of the night. I just left. 3 weeks after that dinner, I packed my things, slowly, methodically, and disappeared from the house I had held up for a decade. I started with my name. I pulled it from every account, every utility, every automatic bill that had made their lives possible. The Wi-Fi, the electric, the private school tuition, the monthly deposits to Claire's savings and Maddie's gym gone. Like air through a cracked window. I didn't announce it. I didn't offer warnings. I just let the silence grow teeth. The girls were too distracted to notice at first. Sarah too proud to ask. But soon the cracks began to show. The first sign was the thermostat. Claire complained the heat was low again. Sarah checked the settings, confused. Turns out the autopay on the gas bill had been declined. It was my card. Not anymore. Then the internet blinked out. Maddie missed a Zoom session with her dance tutor. She blamed the provider. But the provider didn't know her name. The account was under mine. Not anymore. By the time Claire's tuition bounced, 3 days before winter term, the alarm bells had started ringing. Sarah called me. First, a text. Then a voicemail. Then 3 more. The first was annoyed. "Hey, just checking. Did something happen with the tuition payment? Claire's school is saying it didn't go through." The second was more urgent. "Thomas, the heat's been off for a day and I can't get anyone on the phone. Can you please check?" The third was brittle. "I know you're upset, but this isn't the way. The girls are suffering. Please call me back." I didn't answer any of them, not because I wanted revenge, but because I was done pretending I mattered in a house that labeled me disposable. That morning I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in Boulder. Nothing special. Beige carpets, a crooked balcony railing, the hum of traffic instead of laughter. But it was mine. Just mine. No smirks. No silence. No unpaid debts in the form of unspoken expectations. Sarah texted again later that week. Can we talk? The girls didn't mean it like that. I stared at the screen. They meant it exactly like that. Maddie sent one too. Why are you doing this? You've always paid. You always take care of stuff. Exactly. That was the problem. They never saw me as anything but a wallet that breathed. 2 days after I moved, I walked into the bank and closed the joint account. Sarah's name came off in 3 clicks. The teller looked at me and asked, "Are you sure?" I nodded. I had never been more sure of anything. I let her keep the house. I didn't have the stomach to fight over bricks and shingles. But I pulled the safety net. Property tax? She could figure it out. Home insurance? Let her call the agent herself this time. HOA dues, water bills, trash collection, winter maintenance, all redirected. You can't keep calling someone a guest and expect them to keep fixing the roof. Sarah tried to stop me when I left. The day I packed my last bag, she stood in the doorway, eyes red, lips trembling like she was rehearsing a speech she couldn't quite start. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You all said I was just a guest. Well, the guest is leaving." She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just stepped aside. And that told me everything I needed to know. By the end of that first month, the house had *N to rot in quiet ways. Not the kind that made the walls cave in, but the kind that gnawed from the edges. The girls began to notice it. Not all at once, slowly. The Wi-Fi got spotty. The mailbox overflowed. Maddie's gym sent a cancellation notice. Claire's school held her final grades until payment cleared. Sarah tried to cover it all with her savings. But savings are quicksand when the foundation was never yours to begin with. She hadn't worked in years. I thought she deserved comfort. She said she'd handle the groceries and schedules. I said, "Take your time." I didn't know I was giving her time to forget how to survive without me. When the insurance lapsed, she called again. "Thomas, I can't do this alone." I didn't respond, because she could. She just didn't want to learn how. And I wasn't going to teach her anymore. She tried pleading. "They're just kids." They didn't mean it. But they weren't just kids. They were nearly adults. Old enough to know cruelty from truth. Old enough to vote. Old enough to decide who counted. And they had. Maddie sent another message. "You're punishing us for one comment. It's not fair." But it wasn't one comment. It was a decade of side eyes, of ignoring my voice, of rewriting family history to cut me out of the photo. They had their real dad. Let him pay the overdue notices. I stopped by the house once, weeks later. Not to go inside, just to see it. The lawn hadn't been cut. The porch light flickered. One of the shutters hung crooked. Claire's car was in the driveway, the one I co-signed on. A new dent on the bumper. I smiled. Let Jason call the insurance this time. I watched from the street for a few minutes, waiting for something. Regret, anger, nostalgia. But nothing came. Just a quiet kind of satisfaction. Like setting down a burden you didn't realize had been breaking your back for years. Sarah tried calling again. Then emailing. Then a letter, handwritten, folded neatly, no return address. I didn't open it, because I already knew what it would say. That she missed me. That the girls were struggling. That she didn't mean to stay silent. That she wanted to fix it. But silence is a decision. It's the loudest one you can make when someone needs you to speak. I remembered every time I stepped between her and the hard parts of life. Every time I shouldered the blame, covered the cost, absorbed the disrespect. And she let me. She let them. And when they finally pulled the trigger, she didn't lift a finger to stop them. That kind of betrayal doesn't bleed. It starves you, one piece at a time. So I left. Not because I hated them, but because I finally believed them. And I've learned something since. The quietest exits leave the deepest echoes. They didn't call right away. That's the myth they sell you, that when you walk away, people come running. But for the first 2 weeks after I left, the silence was total. It wasn't shock. It was arrogance. They didn't believe I'd really do it. They thought I'd cool off, come back, keep paying. They thought the guest would remember his place and crawl back through the service entrance. But I didn't. I sat in my new apartment. Small, beige, forgettable, and waited. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I knew it was coming. You don't cut the power line to a house and not hear the flickers. Eventually, the dark makes people notice. The first voice I heard was Sarah's. She called one night, her voice sharper than I'd expected. "You've made your point," she said. "No," I said. "You still think this is about making a point." She started listing everything: Claire's school, Maddie's health insurance, the unpaid HOA fine. She sounded like a bill collector, not a wife. "I can't do this on my own," she said, her voice breaking at the edge. I let the silence sit before I answered. "You told me I was just a guest, so I'm treating you like someone else's house." She hung up. 2 days later, Claire called. I stared at her name on the screen for a long time before answering. "Thomas," she said, voice clipped. No apology in the tone. "I got a message from the bursar. I can't register for spring until the balance clears." Silence. "I'm supposed to graduate this year." Still silence. She sighed, annoyed now. "You've always paid. Why stop now?" That did it. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I just said what needed saying. "Because you told me I don't belong, and now you're asking me to act like I do." She started to speak. Some excuse, some twist of memory where she wasn't cruel, just misunderstood. But I hung up before she could rewrite history. That night, I listened to her voicemail twice. Not once did she say, "I'm sorry." Not once did she call me family. Just logistics. Numbers. Panic. They hadn't lost me. They'd lost the life my money built. Maddie came next. It was raining that evening. Hard, slanted rain that made the street lights look like ghosts. I heard the knock before I saw the silhouette through the pebbled glass. Small, hunched, soaked. I opened the door. She didn't speak at first. Just stood there in her hoodie, arms wrapped around herself, her backpack sagging with wet fabric. "I didn't mean it," she said finally, her voice small. "You meant every word," I replied. "You just didn't expect the consequences." Her lip quivered. Not tears yet, but close. She looked around, like she was checking to see if someone was watching, or maybe just stalling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I nodded once. "I hear you." She stepped forward, like she thought the door would open wider, like she'd be invited in. But I didn't move. "I didn't know you'd actually leave," she said. "I didn't think you'd shut everything off. Then you weren't paying attention." She looked up at me, and in her eyes, I saw it. Not sorrow, not understanding. Just need. Desperate, scraping need. The kind that doesn't care about people, just comfort. "I can't go back to Dad's. It's not the same. He doesn't care. Not like you did." I waited. "I'll do better," she said. "I'll talk to Claire. We'll fix it." Still, I didn't move. "You said I'm not family," I said quietly. "You meant it. So now you get to live like I never was." The silence that followed was unbearable for her. She turned to leave. Her backpack sagged heavier. Her footsteps down the stairwell were slow. She didn't cry, and that told me everything. She hadn't come to say sorry. She'd come to negotiate her comforts back. A week passed. The calls got more frequent, more desperate. Sarah tried guilt next. "I'm not sleeping," she said. "The girls are scared. The mortgage is falling behind." I let her talk. "You're better than this," she said. But I wasn't, because for years, I let them cut me open with words and laughed like I didn't bleed. I let them treat me like an ATM with a heartbeat. I wasn't better than this. I was just finally being honest. She tried something softer. "You helped raise them." I smiled at that one. Raise them? I paid for them, carried them. I protected them from the world, and from the damage their own father left behind. But raise? No. You can't raise what won't look you in the eye. They weren't just ungrateful. They were complicit. They wanted all the benefits of my labor without acknowledging its cost. Claire didn't call again. Maddie texted once more. A long one. She said she missed me, said things were hard. Said I had been more of a father than anyone else. She said they didn't mean to hurt me, but I had heard those words before, right after they hit, right before they asked for something else. I didn't reply. Let their real dad figure it out. Let Sarah sell the jewelry I bought her. Pawn the couch I hauled into that living room alone while they all watched. Let them feel what it's like to look at a problem and know no one's coming to fix it. Because that's how I lived every day for 10 years. Waiting for someone to acknowledge me. Waiting for someone to say, "You matter here." That acknowledgement never came. But the needs? They came monthly, predictable as rent, dependable as my silence. They thought I'd always give because I always had. But I'd been keeping receipts. Not on paper. In my bones. And eventually those receipts come due. Sarah sent one final message. A voice note this time. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just said, "I should have said something that night. Too late. Regret without action is just decoration." That's what she never understood. She let me stand alone too many times. Now she gets to know what that feels like. Sarah was the last to show up. 3 weeks after Maddie's doorstep apology. A month since Claire's tuition was frozen. And 41 days since I turned off the lights on a family that never saw me. She appeared. No call. No text. Just a knock at the door one morning, soft and slow. Like someone unsure they deserved to be heard. I almost didn't answer, but I did. She stood there in a heavy coat, hair pulled back, makeup forgotten. In her hands, a stack of unopened mail. Some in red. Some thick with warnings. Others thin and tired. Like they'd made the journey just to be ignored. She looked smaller than I remembered. We stared at each other for a long time. Long enough for the cold air to slip past my legs and settle in my bones. Then she whispered it. I was wrong. Not dramatic. Not rehearsed. Just broken. "I should have stood up for you," she said, eyes not meeting mine. "That night. Every night before it. I should have said something." I stepped aside. Wordlessly. She came in slow like the floor might crack. We sat in silence for a while. No hugs. No coffee. Just two people surrounded by things that used to be shared, now separated by paperwork and pride. "I didn't think you'd leave," she said finally. "You didn't think I mattered enough to stay," I replied. She flinched, then nodded. The mail sat between us like a coffin. "You paid for everything," she said. "I never kept track. I didn't even know how much until it stopped." I didn't respond. Let the truth settle into her chest. The girls, they didn't know what they were saying. They knew. I cut in. Calm. Final. Maybe not the depth, but they knew what it meant. And you let them. Her eyes welled, but no tears fell. I thought, if I didn't choose sides, things would balance. And did they? She didn't answer. She didn't have to, because balance doesn't come from silence. Comes from truth. And she never told it. For 10 years, I walked that house like a guest who couldn't leave. Paid like a father. Worked like a partner. Slept like a stranger. I handed them a life I built brick by brick, and they invited someone else to take the credit. Her ex, still nowhere. The ghost in every photo. The man whose absence was louder than my presence. Still unpaid child support. Still missed birthdays. Still just enough presence to remind them who deserved the title of dad. I was never jealous. Just exhausted. Exhausted by pretending I didn't notice the way Claire lit up when Jason called. The way Maddie used my money to buy him birthday gifts. The way Sarah never corrected them when they told people they only had one parent. Exhausted from paying for loyalty that never arrived. So I stopped paying. And the loyalty still didn't arrive, but something better did. Silence. Pure. Empty. Unobligated. "I want to fix it," Sarah said. "I do." I looked her in the eye. "Fix what?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. "Because what we had wasn't broken. It was dead." "There's nothing to fix," I said. "You all made your decision." I just finally listened. Her shoulders collapsed under that sentence. Like it weighed more than the mortgage I used to cover. "I miss you," she said. I nodded. You missed the version of me that didn't have boundaries. Silence. Then, you're not the same anymore. No, I'm not. Because peace changes a man. So does clarity. I lived in chaos for 10 years, convinced that if I just gave a little more, waited a little longer, smiled a little softer, they'd see me. They didn't. But now, I'm seen. Maybe not by them, but by myself. And that's all I ever needed. She didn't cry. Not really. A few tears, yes, but not the kind that ask forgiveness. The kind that signal loss. She knew she couldn't ask for me back. She could only mourn what she'd helped bury. We talked for another 10 minutes, not about us. About bills. About who would handle what. About selling the house. Claire had moved back in after her lease ended. Maddie was commuting to school now. The heater was out again. The fridge made a strange noise. There was mold in the upstairs bathroom. I listened. I nodded. I gave her the number of a plumber I trusted. And that was it. She left. I didn't walk her out. She didn't ask to stay. Later that week, I got a formal request, sale documents for the house. Sarah wanted to put it on the market. She needed help splitting the equity. I signed what I needed to. Fair split. No spite. The house went up within a month. A little blue sign hammered into the front lawn I'd once mowed every Saturday morning. The photos online still showed my old recliner in the living room. The tools I left in the garage. The curtains I hung. The kitchen island I built with my own hands. The one Claire spilled wine on and never apologized for. It sold fast. I didn't drive by. I didn't need to. Let someone else deal with the walls I held up. I stayed in my apartment, small, simple, and finally mine. No one left dishes in the sink. No one rolled their eyes when I asked for help. No one forgot my birthday. No one asked for gas money without a thank you. It wasn't quiet because it was empty. It was quiet because it was earned. Sarah called once after the sale, just to say it was done. She sounded tired. Not angry. Not bitter. Just hollow. She asked how I was. I said, free. She didn't call again. Claire sent a message months later. Short. I didn't know what we were doing to you. I'm sorry. I didn't reply. Not out of spite. Just because I didn't believe it. Not yet. Sorry isn't currency. It's a receipt. Proof of guilt. Not payment. Maddie sent photos of her graduation later that year. She smiled in every one. Jason in the background, hand on her shoulder. I wasn't mentioned. Not tagged. Not thanked. That was the last contact I got from them. People always ask what it's like. Leaving a family. They expect heartbreak. They expect longing. But here's what it really is. It's like finally stepping out of the rain and realizing you've been soaked for years. It's not joy. It's not relief. The stillness. The standing in a room where your name isn't a burden. It's paying a bill and knowing it's yours, only yours. The silence that doesn't cut. I don't date. Not yet. I don't need new noise. I go to work. I come home. I cook for one. I sleep without being woken by slammed doors or muffled shouting. I exist fully. And in that, I found balance. Not in being needed, but in being enough. Because I gave everything I had to people who measured love in blood and dismissed me in silence. And now, I give only to those who give back. So tell me, was I cruel to walk away? Was I wrong to stop carrying the weight? Or was I finally right, to let the house collapse when I was the only one holding up the walls?